listening to The Cooler Ring, a podcast made for manufacturing marketers. Here are Carmen Perry and Jeff White.
Welcome to The Cooler Ring, a podcast for manufacturing marketers brought to you by Cooler Partners. My name is Jeff White, and joining me today is Carmen Perry. Carmen, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, happy to be here, and always good to be recording another episode of the show.
It is,
Yeah,
and we don't often get to chat with more sales leader type folks on the Cooler Ring. It does tend to drift a little bit more to the marketing side, but this is an interesting pairing of the two.
yeah, and to be fair, we are speaking to a marketer, not a sales guy, but it's a marketer for a manufacturer's rep company, which is just, it's a lens that we haven't always brought to the show. So I'm really excited to share that with the listeners today, and I know that it's almost we've heard it so much now about how sales is changing during the pandemic or at post-pandemic, but um, a lot of people can say that it's changing, but not a lot of people have the so what. So I'm looking forward to getting into the so what with our guest today and kind of what that means for manufacturers reps in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, and it's certainly the case that, this sort of relationship between manufacturers and reps and distributors and end customers it's a pretty unique situation in terms of a typical marketing and sales process too. Like, this is not really the environment of SaaS or
Yeah,
consumer manufacturing or anything like that. It's very different.
indeed. Let's get on with it.
Cool. So joining us today is Zak Nelson. Zak is the Director of Marketing and Business Development at ArKco Sales. Welcome to the Cooler Ring, Zak.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Zach, it's awesome to have you on the show. I want to learn more about your background and ArKco Sales. Please, I'm all ears. Tell us about ArKco Sales and how you ended up there.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of an interesting story. So, ArKco Sales is a family-run, second-generation manufacturing sales rep business, electromechanical in focus, based in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. So, their territory is the upper Midwest states, and they have about 20 different lines covering everything from power to thermal. They've got HMI and interconnect solutions. They've got enclosures and moving into more of the EV charging and electrification world as well now. And they've been in business for 47 years, I want to say now, since 1977. And they've been successful all that time, but times are changing. And I think a couple of years ago, the president, Steve Carr, saw the writing on the wall, saw the need to move into marketing or to develop some marketing uh, as a program, as a full-fledged department, and looked around and found me newly moved to Minnesota and looking for work, and asked if I would be able to help him develop a marketing program for his rep firm. And so that's why I came aboard about a year and a half ago.
Hey, you've mentioned, Zach, that this isn't typical. Manufacturers' reps don't often have marketers in the mix. And it certainly does sound like, ArCo saw that writing on the wall and did make this move, which is obviously a smart way to go forward. Why do you think it is that typical rep organizations don't employ marketers?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think first of all is uh, money. I think a lot of rep firms work. I mean, we're fewer than 10 employees, but I think to have a full time marketing person costs a lot, and so you're lucky if you can afford someone on your payroll. So that said, I think also there's this sense of what is the value you're getting for that payroll, and why can't I just bring in either part time or just a agency to do a one-off project, or why do I need it at all? We can just develop whatever we need, sales sheets, cut sheets in house, and we have a website. You know, what more do you need?
And to be fair, I suppose, been in business for 40 some odd years, not a huge number of people. So that's probably some that's just hardcore blocking and tackling sales, I would think. And so there'd be a lot of belief in that, if you will, that kind of hand-to-hand combat of business.
Yeah, I think there's still a strong belief in that, and I think that that is not misplaced. I think that is still why sales reps are called sales reps. But I do believe that the landscape has changed. The way that buying is done is changing as generations have shifted and buying behaviors are changing. So new generations are spending less time speaking with reps ahead of time. They're doing more of their pre-purchase search for solutions online. And just a lot of these behaviors are pointing to a need to get information and material out there and to also lead with some branding as well. And branding is something that I think that's another big can of worms for a lot of rep firms, is because when you start talking about branding to most rep firms, including in my own, the, you get blank stares. I think the immediate response you get from a lot of folks is, well, whose brand are you talking about? The immediate response is the manufacturing principle, and we have 20 of them. I mean, ArKco doesn't have its own brand. Why would we have our own brand? Well, of course we do. Every rep has its own brand, whether they realize it or not. It's just a question of how you use it and how you promote it.
I, get- I think it's interesting to imagine that. I'm trying to live vicariously and pretend that I'm younger or something, Zach. But I'm trying to like put myself in those shoes of that younger generation coming in, and if like the older generations probably look at him saying, "You don't even know just to call the rep. Like you don't need to spend all this time online searching for stuff. You could just call the rep, call the salesperson." But the chances are the new person in that role is going to be it may even take them more time to invest in the research and do it themselves, but it's obvious, I suppose, as you stated, that that's exactly what's going to happen. They're not going to be picking up the phone to call the rep.
Yeah, well, a lot of the training happens on the job, not in engineering school. I don't know what the curriculum entails necessarily, but I would venture to guess that in many engineering schools, the curriculum doesn't involve talking about the procurement process and the sourcing process and what the role of a manufacturer's rep does. And so there's been this, process of cutting ourselves out of this fabric of the industry. And, reps play an integral part of this thriving industry. And so, I think we have to re-insinuate ourselves. And part of that is talking to these younger reps. Now, there's this statistic, it ranges from, I think, 60% to 66% of the millennials and Zoomers that are coming into the workforce that are spending their time, two-thirds of their time, on the internet before they even pick up the phone or call someone for a quote or to ask about a product or a spec sheet. And so it's a cause for alarm for a lot of folks, but you can just, you know, tackle that, play it as it lays, and just say, okay, well, if that's the truth, then let's see where we need to be. You can't line up your sales team and place them up front the entire, that's a full court press if you want to use the sports metaphor, you're going to exhaust them. So you need to have a team that's responsive to those behaviors. And so where do you expect these engineers to learn, these young engineers, and even at the distributor level, where do you expect them to learn to talk to the reps? You're not going to expect them to learn it in their schools. You are dependent then on having their mentors on the job teach them, and so you're lucky if you get that. So really, it's incumbent on the reps themselves to start to teach those behaviors, and in the meantime, to also then respond to the behaviors that they currently exhibit.
The thing that brings to mind for me, and I mean, your background, you're a copywriter, you work in brand, that sort of thing, and you're coming into this organization on the heels of the weirdest couple of years in the history of humanity, and you've probably got a lot of disoriented sales folks, and you're inserting yourself into that and kind of looking at it holistically and saying, what am I going to do? So where did you start? Like, how did you discern how you could help early on?
Sure. It's and I think for me it was a little different because and for everyone it's going to be a little bit different because you're always working within the framework of a company culture and management that is going to be different and a set of priorities that are going to be different. And there's already pieces in play that you're just going to have to start running with. So already, I came in, at the very tail end of 2022 and just had to start laying groundwork. And so for me, that involved two things. The first thing I started with, because it just didn't affect anyone else's work, was to start developing some new visual brand identity for ArKco. There was this old logo and typeface from, I want to say, it looked like it was developed in the early 80s that just no one had the original files. So the printer that the local printer that we had gone with had some uh, files that had kind of combined several elements of the logo. But luckily, the logo was simple enough that me, with my mediocre graphic design skills, was able to actually reproduce it pretty faithfully, in the Adobe Creative Suite, and then from there was able to then develop our new logo design, completely overturning it and making it just more exciting, approachable, contemporary. And with that in place and starting to then roll that out into the various corners of our ArCco universe where it needs to be seen, then it was a matter of, okay, well, the sales guys in early 2023 just needed material, you know, to run with. And I wasn't up to speed, learning what capacitors were and learning what, bus bars were and all of that stuff. So what I could do secondarily was to start creating some print collateral. So I developed what I call affectionately hot sheets, which are these one pagers that are not sales sheets. They're not, what in the industry are called cut sheets. They're not spec sheets. They are purposefully left with lots of white space. They're kind of these sexier looking, flyers essentially that highlight anywhere from 1 to 3 products at a time, with just a few bullet points meant to just spark interest, show you what the product is, you know, aimed at a technical audience, but without a lot of technical specifics, and with a QR code on there that can point to that's trackable, that can point back to our website and with more information, or towards the manufacturer's website. And so immediately just started getting a lot of traction and a lot of leads just from that. And so that was the first quarter of 2023. And so from there, we just started building out, this marketing program, started, you know, uh, developing strategies, started, creating email programs, started just building the channels, planning the channels that we'd be using, um, developing a wish list for later down the line. In the summer, I started developing swag for all the trade shows we'd be going to. That became a priority, and so that was another fun thing. We developed these little here. I think I've got one over here. These little pen lights that have our little logo on them, and you won't be able to see it too well, but we took the logo and, in addition, renamed them darkness suppressors.
That sounds like something out of Harry Potter.
Right. So, because the end user is engineers, I took that, and with the other trade show swag that we developed a kind of higher end piece of swag, some dry bags for giveaways that I call portable hydro exclusion chambers. We got little tissue packs that we call sniffles, or sanitary nasolacrimal impedance filters. We've got, yeah, what else did we develop there? Oh, yeah, and chip clips, little magnetic refrigerator chip clips, the little bottle opener on the back. That, because we're in the electronics industry, I call a macro chip. So there's more where that came from, but that's one of the benefits of having a creative marketer on your team, is that you can have some fun, target your audience, and stand out from the rest of your peers.
I love that. I love it because you say that in advance necessarily, and people may not be able to picture how that's going to come off. But I'm pretty sure as they start to see that come to life and start to see the reactions, it's a unique way in, and I love doing that in combination with what is frankly a very hardworking idea. This notion of the hot sheets. Uh, I don't know how many times I've said this. Like you got to sometimes just give the sales team something to talk about, some way, some new thing to talk about, something, some excuse to open their mouth because they're good at doing it when they have something to talk about. And I just really love that idea. Uh, I'm curious, Zach. Like, when we started talking about this, it kind of sounded like they were approaching hiring marketing talent from a bit of a defensive posture. Like, the world's changing and we need to react to that. So maybe not defensive, but at the very least reactive. Have you found in your work so far? 'Cause, I mean, there's a level of scale that I'm guessing you're able to bring to the organization, a level of impact that you're able to bring that's different than just hiring one more salesperson, and expanding that way. Have you gotten a sense that with your new work that maybe there's a bit of an offensive play at foot? Like, are they starting? Is the organization starting to see that it's not just about reacting to a changing world, but actually we can drive serious competitive advantage here, and maybe even just um, really accelerate our growth ambitions as a result?
I think the rest of the team's beginning to see that, and I think our president, is definitely seeing it as he goes to association conferences. Like we were both recently at the Electronics Representatives Association conference in Austin, Texas, where there were several breakouts about marketing and about future proofing your rep business. And I think he heard the message loud and clear from all sides that exactly what you're saying, it's not a defensive move but an offensive move, that it's a long game, that you're not best served by aiming just for using your marketing to generate leads in the short term, but that coupling that, that doesn't hurt as part of your strategy, um, but that in the long term demand generation, bringing that inbound marketing, having material that is drawing customers to you, whether it's through brand awareness, whether it's just through content marketing or these other approaches, in the long term is going to yield far more dividends for the average rep than just purely chasing individual leads. Now, there's also account-based marketing, which we haven't even talked about, but which is certainly a lot of reps are starting to turn to, and that's marketing driven. I mean, that's actually really where you start to see sales and marketing really working closely together, is because that's a lot more labor intensive, but that's its own strategy, you know. But yeah, it's absolutely a more aggressive approach. Our leadership sees it, and a couple of our reps, who our younger reps who have been going to these conferences, have been kind of hearing sort of the gospel being preached. Are starting to hear it from other sides, not just from me.
It's always nice to not be the only one singing from that song sheet.
Well, yeah, right, and especially when they start hearing these messages that aren't just talking points. The messages that they're hearing don't use the same verbiage that I use, but they rhyme.
I have to think too, and I've seen this before, when you bring things like swag into it, when you bring a revitalized brand into it, oftentimes, especially, people on the sales side, they begin to feel more comfortable in the skin of that brand. They enjoy kind of the newness of it, and they're probably hearing about, you know, the darkness suppressor from people at the conference, or at the, wherever they might be, and hearing people talk about that probably gives them faith that they're headed in the right direction. I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but that's my impression.
No, and it's been part of, and this is something also I had wanted to say to Carmen's earlier point. It's been part of this learning experience for me too. That as much as I might be coming in with my own experience and expertise, there's this kind of humbling moment or many moments where um, I might initially chafe at this redirection, at being told, okay, well, we need to take the summer to focus on swag. When here I'm trying to focus on, you know, oh, we need to be getting our email channels set up and our social channels set up, and why am I focusing on swag? Well, it turns out that exactly, Jeff, as you're saying, that swag was critical in retrospect for not just external industry buy-in, but for internal team buy-in. And that the Carmen, to your point earlier, those hot sheets, even though I came in with perhaps a lot of ambition and perhaps no small amount of impatience to do everything at once, starting with these hot sheets and for the whole first year being introduced to new people as the guy who creates these hot sheets, which is a little bit like eating some humble pie. It's like I've done some other things, um, but to take a moment and to remind myself to be more humble and to just listen to what's resonating and to what's working, and to own it and love it and appreciate it, and see the value through their eyes. I mean, that's what marketing is about. My customer isn't just these engineers. My customer, in this case, is also my team. This is an audience whose needs and values I need to respond to every bit as much as the people that we're selling to, and at least for me during my first year. And so those hot sheets, having that swag, it was very critical in those early stages to developing a spirit of brand, even before we sat down and had a workshop as a team to talk about verbiage. And I think in retrospect, this happy accident will seem wise, and we'll give ourselves credit for wisdom where it just was an accident. We I had wanted to do a team build, a team workshop on brand. These are workshops I've led when I worked for a marketing agency in the past. Uh, where you sit down and talk about, okay, what are our shared values, and how do those mesh with our mission? What is our mission? What is our positioning? And you start to grow this organic and very specific brand out of that, and you don't use vague words like teamwork and leadership and integrity, but you get into real specifics. But you know my team, they're great at sales. They're not writers, but what they do well is they're intuitive, so they respond to these things that I've created. And so if these darkness suppressors are something that they can rally behind, if these hot sheets are something they can rally behind, I can see what it is that they're responding to and use those as these, baselines for developing.
And you're putting some, those are some chips that you can cash later as well from a cooperation perspective. As I feel like that's something that marketers sometimes that jump, like you say, quickly to the brand workshop or what have you. From the people on the other end of it, they just think that, oh, we're going to sit and listen to a marketer talk about marketing speak for a half a day, and it's about the last thing that they ever want to do. But be a little bit more willing to indulge such a conversation after they've seen some other more direct impact. So I very, very much agree with you, Zach. I think you're going to be able to look at that in hindsight and say, yeah, that was the smartest thing we ever thought of.
Right.
I'm glad I came up with it.
Yeah.
Those hot sheets, though, I mean,
I think it's a great idea. And I love it, just calling them something different because it allows you to give them a different expectation.
Yeah. Half our team still calls them cut sheets. It's funny. No, it's fine.
you win some, you lose some.
You're not going to win all the battles all the time. Is that?
Right.
Zach, it's been lovely to have you on the show. I just wonder, as we draw our time here draws to a close, if there's any That kind of piece of advice that you might have for somebody jumping into the first marketing role in a very sales heavy organization that you haven't kind of extended thus far? Is there just one nugget that you're like, I need to get that out of my head?
Yeah, there's a couple. I was just actually on a panel at the ERA conference talking about digital marketing and how to get into it. So it's exactly on that topic. Certainly, for those listening, if you are members of the ERA, there's a white paper by Pace Group that is all about how to get started in digital marketing. I'm not a member of the Pace Group, but they developed this really great white paper, and it's available to members. But I would say, first of all, take a lesson from my, kind of humble stumblings, and remember that you always have to walk before you run. Um, and so, no matter your ambitions, just have patience and know that there's a long game here. That that whatever money you can invest it in a marketing person, whether it's a third party, and I would say especially for the small businesses, invest in third party marketing because you may not be sure what you need yet, and until you know what you need, having that outside help, having that outside, and I say this as someone who's done both now, in-house marketing and working for an agency, having the outside help can really be a learning experience and can give you some knowledge and some help getting moving in a direction. And even if you end up finding some things that you push against and that don't work for you, it gives you something to start doing and a direction to start going in. And then down the line, you can reevaluate and say, okay, well, now we need to do more either with the same agency or a different agency, or now we're ready to bring on a part-time or a full-time marketing person. But if you have extra money floating around, even if you don't find it, because you're going to be left in the dust if you don't invest in some marketing now. And that can be anything from an email program to sprucing up your website and investing in some SEO, especially now that SEO is changing in light of artificial intelligence. There's just these little things that you can start pecking away at. And there's a lot of free tools out there now to help you. So just pick a strategy, pick a channel, and just start working on it. And just free up some money somewhere to get some help with it.
That's good advice, Zach. And I think your point about the outside versus internal resourcing, it's interesting. I think in bringing you on, yes, you're internal, but you're also bringing a very external perspective. And I think that, they've almost, I think your team's gotten a bit of the best of both worlds because they have an agency style resource that's able to bring that external perspective, but it's working internally. And, so it's been a really cool story. Thanks for sharing with us, Zach.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been really a fun little conversation here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I love the part about, hiring an agency first. I think it's a great idea. Not that we're biased or anything, but
Oh, of course not.
it has been wonderful having you on, Zach. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to The Cooler Ring with Carmen Perry and Jeff White. Don't miss a single manufacturing marketing insight. Subscribe now at KulaPartners.com/The Cooler Ring. That's KULAPartners.com/The Cooler Ring.